my name's Giovanni, and the screencast is going to be about typography, specifically creating custom typography for logos or any other treatments or something like that. Now, we have all kinds of screencasts on Image Style. Jason is doing Hello World. He's talking about code, and we cover all kinds of things. We talk about books and whatever. But I'm mostly, I do a lot of illustration. I do a lot of custom typography, logos, branding, that sort of thing. I'm mainly interested in images and the way you can communicate effectively with them. I started out as a fine artist, and it's just like this is the kind of stuff that I'm, driven by. So this will be the first in an as yet unnamed series of screencasts about art, illustration, and typography. So I kind of want to talk about creating custom typography from a couple different directions. I think a lot of us tend to go with whatever works. We find some typeface that kind of fits what our client's needs are or something like that. But, you can do a lot with typography beyond just, grabbing, Helvetica and slapping it down. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, Like I myself don't really consider myself to be a typophile by any stretch of the imagination. To some extent, I don't even like the way large blocks of type look, but there is something really amazing about individual letterforms and the way that small groups of them work together. You can create a lot of motion and mood just by how you create type and what you do with it. So this is kind of like a first step in working with typography, and like this is hand-drawn, so it's pretty open and limitless in terms of what you're going to do with it. You're not laying down a huge number of rules about how you're going to restrain yourself or how specific you want to be about creating legibility and that sort of thing. So in this is just totally free form. Like this, for instance, I just drew with a ballpoint pen, scanned it in, and then just did a whole bunch of stuff in Photoshop to create this kind of effect. From there you can kind of start working with existing typefaces, grabbing a couple characters and outlining them, and then just changing them to suit your needs. So in this case, I was doing something for Halloween. This is my initials, and so I wanted to create that kind of like horror feel, and so pick a serif typeface and just kind of go at it with vector work. So you can see this is just all vector, and it the actual form of the character is pretty obvious, and I think that in terms of how to accomplish this sort of thing is pretty simple. So there's a lot more structure to this because that structure is borrowed from something that's pre-existing. So once you kind of understand, the kind of mood that you're trying to accomplish with creating typefaces, there are a lot of ways that typographers build their faces. But one thing I've found that works for me is to build typefaces out of components, doing something that is sort of modular in effect. And so that's kind of what I want to talk about today, is kind of how to make decisions about building custom typefaces based upon the mood and effect you're trying to accomplish, and then to utilize this modular approach. So what I do when I first get started is I like to think about things based upon X height. How chunky do I want it to look? What size am I going to be using it at? That sort of thing. Because you can create a lot of effect, just by giving something a nice tall X height. It has a lot of body to it and a lot of weight, and it can carry better. Smaller X height, and when I'm saying X height, I'm talking about like the height of this character right here, literally the X height. So when you have like an X height that's kind of low, you sort of have an open, or vertical, like your stems are really tall and everything, and it's just a different mood, you know. So for this one, and this is like totally made up stuff, this is not for a client or anything, wanted to do these two words, tilted cube, and I wanted to have sort of an oblique feel to it. So basically I just go and I kind of draw it, right? I just go for it, kind of just draw it by hand and kind of let the way things carry from one letter form to another, just kind of let them do their thing and don't worry about it too much in terms of trying to restrict myself down to being really accurate in terms of making sure that every weight is exactly the same. And if you look, you know, I do it a little bit. I try to be a little you know, accurate in terms of those things by doing things like this shape here that makes the L. I just copied it and dragged it over and used it for the D, because I knew that my plan would probably be to create a vertical that would be one of these little modular pieces, and anytime I have the same character, I'd probably carry that over and just maybe, you know, made some adjustments based upon, you know, any kind of ligatures that I need to add or something like that. So that's kind of my approach for sketching it out. Sometimes if I want to make sure that my obliques match, I'll add a layer that just has those lines, kind of defines the width of a large character, and then I can, you know, just shift it over and make sure that everything matches. I mean, that's just something that I do. I think it makes it a lot easier. And then like right here, I use this to kind of measure all of the widths of my pieces. So, you know, you can be as accurate as you want to be. You know, there's nothing stopping you from going ahead and kind of defining some of the qualities of your typeface here. So I know typographers tend to work with specific characters first because it allows them to get as many of the modular pieces as possible. But since we're working with two specific words, I didn't do that. I didn't start with kind of like the normal letters for defining, you know, what modular pieces you'll use to build your typeface, because in this case it doesn't matter. So once I get this done, kind of get where I want to be, kind of take a look at it and maybe shift things around, I just take a screenshot of it and then I carry it over to Illustrator like this. And, you know, everybody has their method for vectorizing things. But what I do is I take my drawing and I put it on a layer. And then I take that layer and I set its opacity to somewhere around 40 and I lock it. And then I go to the layer, I create a layer below it, and that's the layer I actually draw on. And the nice thing about that is that if you have a layer below this low opacity layer, and I use a Wacom tablet to do all this stuff, so I recommend it, but it's not, you know, a requirement, is once you get here, I'm working on a layer below the drawing itself. You can actually see through the drawing, but your vector art doesn't obscure it, so you get this like transparency look. And you know, it's kind of nice because if I create two shapes, they don't create any kind of interference because the shape is a lower opacity. See, I get the visual of it being one thing because it's below the transparent layer. So if I go to wireframing, you've got two shapes here, and so I can see everything all the time. So that's why I do it that way. I think it works. You know, do whatever works for you. So when I start, I lock the drawing down so that I can't move it around. First thing I do is pick out a character that has a lot of the components that I'll need. So I actually started with this first one because it had this circular shape, which I have circles that are repeated. It has this curve, which kind of is defined in multiple places. It's going to eventually be this and this. All of this shapes off to the side down here, you know, it's going to be composed of the same thing. So what I do is I made this right here. And you can see how I did that. So again, I'm going to shift over to wireframe so that you can see that I made this out of multiple pieces. So there's 4 pieces. These modules are going to be the beginning components of how I'm going to build the rest of the typeface. This was just another attempt. I started messing around with the tops of these pieces, so I started shifting up to other things. So once you have these little components, you start breaking them away. And in this case, I went ahead and decided to make some changes to the T. I ended up shifting it and going this way. And I realized that, you know, this piece here, the width of this vertical would be carried through all of these different verticals, even here. And that was probably one of the most important pieces. And to make this fit within that framework, I decided to change the shape and make this be one of the major components of the piece. So you'll see that what I ended up doing was kind of grabbing this, shifting it over, and then doing stuff like this. You know, like creating another shape on top, selecting them both, and then using Pathfinder to break them away, because now you end up with something like this, and you have this kind of rhythm that's created. So I'm not going to go through and actually do all of this right now. It's sort of time consuming, and I really just want to kind of show you the basic concept behind using pieces to build your typeface. So in the end, what I ended up with is this. So you see this repeated form throughout. You know, it's literally the same thing over and over again, just cut off at different places. You see the same points up here. This curve is the original one from over here. You see that, and making sure that, you know, my circle carries through nice and cleanly. There are some divergent pieces, like you see this right here and this right here. This shape is what carries through here. So to me, logically, it made sense, and I just made sure that it flowed nicely. This is same piece here, right there. And in fact, I think I took this and flipped it upside down to create the other side of it. You know, like my E here is broken off right there. And when I pulled it over here, I actually kind of liked it. I don't think I wouldn't consider this to be finished, and there are still some kind of rough spots. Like you can see that if I get in close, this obviously needs to be cleaned up a little bit. So this would not be considered finished in my opinion. And there are some other areas that I consider to be a little less refined than I would like, even here. But the point of this is to use components, build some consistency into the typeface so that you're creating like a language, a visual language that creates the mood or the feel that you want to accomplish. And I think that even with just these few characters, there's enough here to build out an entire alphabet if that's what you wanted to actually do in the end. It's also enough of a visual language to build out additional components if you were, say, you know, doing titles for a website or something like that. You know, there's enough character here to kind of inform any other artwork that you would want to do. So that's basically what I wanted to go through today, just to kind of look at how you can pretty simply create, you know, pretty nice, clean display typefaces. You know, this same method is used to create body copy typefaces and you know, lots of professional typefaces. But I like it. I think it's cool and pretty simple to approach once you have the general concept of just trying to figure out what pieces you need to build stuff out of. So, you know, that's pretty much it. You know, any questions or comments, leave them below, and, you know, I'll try to answer them in maybe a future screencast. All right, thanks.